It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again, time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 313. Tonight I'm joined by Emo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Doesn't sound like a lucky number.
Kodra.
I don't know. It's, actually, is it Prime?
Tam?
Every number is lucky.
Talon?
I mean, by that definition, every number is unlucky.
Also true.
I guess.
Yes, it's Prime.
When everything is special, nothing is special?
I mean, not everything is Prime, at least, so you have that going for you.
It's true. It's true. Which reminds me, Prime Day should happen on a prime number.
Or even relatively prime.
So tonight we're going to start with a bit of a retraction. And I'm not even sure that that's the correct term for this. So some time ago, I set up RTX Voice on my machine. RTX Voice is supposed to run on tensor cores on an RTX video card. I have CUDA cores on my old GTX video card, and it's a 1080 Ti, and it does a good job, and there's some shenanigans that you can do to make it run on this card. Tensor cores and CUDA cores are oftentimes used for physics calculations in games, and apparently I was putting strain on my card, and some of the things that might be affected by that are camera moving behind a character in a game. So a lot of the issues that I had with mouse movement in Avengers seemed to largely be RTX, because when I'm not running it, everything's fine. So I just have to remember to shut off RTX Voice before playing that game. And it makes me wonder what other glitches I've encountered that could be chalked up to the fact that I did shenanigans and I'm running things in an unintended fashion. The beta, however, was not great. And I talked about that at length a few weeks ago. But what I've found out is, so first of all, I talked to a bunch of people who played it with keyboard and mouse, and none of them experienced any of the things that I experienced. I even recorded a video of it so I could show off what was happening. And they're like, oh yeah, no, nothing like that ever happened, which led me down the route of a bunch of Googling, and someone else had reported a similar issue with running RTX Voice and camera movement in a different game. So I took a gamble, thinking, well, maybe I just was unfairly judging Avengers. And it was a pretty big gamble, considering I had already refunded the game, and I doubt Steam would allow me to refund it a second time. So yeah, I've been playing Avengers, and a couple things. The beta started quite a ways into the game and skipping over a bunch of necessary explanation of how things work, like gear. When you actually play the game, it flows pretty nicely, and the story really is the thing that carries this game forward, and they have done right by Kamala Khan.
Yeah,
it is really good. And today I finished the story, and for the most part, the main story is really good. It's really good. The game itself, I'm kind of up in the air about. It is fine. As you get more skills, your characters feel more unique and more true to their characters, but those unlock over time, and they kind of modify the way some of your abilities work. The game as a whole is the sort of game where, like, it is basically Kamala Khan, and then you unlock another character, and then it's that character in Kamala Khan, and then you unlock another character. So a good chunk of the storyline is getting the band back together. And I won't go into much more detail other than that, but like the events of A-Day caused the Avengers to all go their separate ways, and you're now reuniting this group, but you're doing it through the eyes of a super fan, and it's charming as hell. Kamala Khan is charming as hell. The interactions with her family are great, even though like really it's just her and her dad, but they're amazing.
She's super adorable.
Like this game has done really well by that interaction. The game plays pretty smooth. I think they've done a bunch of tweaking between that beta build, which may or may not have been the thing that they were showing off ages ago at conventions. So it may have been a very old build. But the game's fairly enjoyable. Like so far, I've seen like there's a main storyline, which is really good. There's a follow-up storyline after that I've not even started. And then each of the characters has kind of an iconic mission that allows you to unlock like their most comic booky outfit. So yeah, like it actually wasn't bad when it launched. So I guess that's good. Ammo, you've been playing this, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm not super far into it yet. I've met the second character that you have, so I'm kind of road tripping a little bit, I guess. But I loved the intro. I thought it was really nice and very fun. Like it was, it felt good, and the whole super nerdy aspect really fit well. I haven't had any issues with the gameplay. It's all felt pretty decent, smooth to me. I think sometimes I think I had to get used to the controls a little bit, but once I kind of got the swing of how things worked, it felt like pretty okay to me.
The only real complaint that I have
so far
is that the difficulty level kind of is uneven at times. Like I don't know if you've encountered that to where all of a sudden you just seem to be getting rolled by mobs.
No, I don't think I'm very far in for anything like that, because mostly the first part is like the kind of like pseudo stealthy stuff, and then like fairly simple combat, I would say. And of course, like how everybody works a little bit, but then that doesn't really matter. But I'm just playing on normal, and I haven't run into any issues yet.
Okay. Yeah, like as I got towards the end of the main story, I was starting to encounter things that like were just overly difficult. Like certain mob types. So like I had to kind of focus those down, or they would just kind of get out of control. But not too bad. I mean,
yeah, I don't think I've had like anything. I've had like the next step up from generic grunt types, I think, really, but nothing too crazy yet.
I kind of get the impression that it was designed for a controller.
Yeah.
Because like some of the keyboard bindings are hard to reach.
Yeah, I think I have to... The dodge is kind of weird for me, so I think I'm going to have to go through and set some stuff up on my mouse so it's a little easier for me to do, because my dodging ain't so great yet.
That's what I had to do, is I had to basically put dodge on the side of my mouse so that I could get to it faster. Because like dodge by default is left control, which is way the hell out of like, that doesn't make sense. Like, my pinky doesn't want to go in that direction.
Oh, I guess I am pretty used to that from other first-person shooter games.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm used to hitting that button, but not, like, you have to rely on dodge.
You got to do it a lot here.
Yeah. I mean, and technically you can double tap a direction to dodge, apparently, on your WASD. But... yeah, I don't know. Like, the other thing that I wish it had was a toggle run, not...
Oh, yeah, holding down shift, yeah.
Yeah, like, I've gotten used to games like Destiny that have push once to click into run, and then you're in run mode until for whatever reason, you're stopping. Whereas this is very much old school shooter. Hold down shift so you can run.
Yeah. And like also with the dodge, I think I've done a little bit of the double tapping, which is fine, but for some where you like hold down a left control and push towards the enemy and you like vault over them and stuff like that, I don't think that works with a double tap. So like I was trying to twist my hand around to do that sort of stuff in the tutorial-ish section.
Well, and a lot of times when you're getting attacked, there'll be these rings that appear while the attack is going on, and you have to hit dodge at a specific point as that ring is closing for it to be successful. And yeah, like a double tap isn't really conducive to timing something like that.
Yeah, that is true.
There's a weird QTE dodge mechanic.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I think there were
to get
a few
perfect dodge.
Yeah, and a few spots where like button prompts would come up, but yeah.
Yeah, and those are at least always going to be E or I think F.
Yeah.
And those are at least reachable. Really, I didn't encounter... Okay, so one of the big complaints I had is there's this set-piece battle that happens where, like, you're playing each of the Avengers during that A-Day scenario.
Yeah.
And that thing is just chock full of QTE. Like, you're constantly pushing some button or being prompted to hit some button at some time. And that led me to believe that's what the entire game was going to be like. And realistically, that's kind of the exception rather than the rule. I didn't encounter much of that throughout the entire game. And mostly it's only for very specific cinematic set pieces, which don't happen very often. Like, it reminds me a lot of some of the battles in, like, God of War, where there would be a specific moment in the fight where, like, you would hit a thing to trigger a sequence, and that kind of happens, but, like, those are in really big set-piece battles. It's not just random mini-boss type things. You can do a finisher on pretty much anybody when they get low, and that's fine, and it's always the same button. It's just hit E when they're low, and you'll do some kind of they call them takedown moves.
It does sound like they got some inspiration from God of War, the old God of War.
Yeah, like it reminds me a lot of how the original God of War used QuickTime events, to where, like, oh hey, I've gotten this phase of the boss down to a certain point. Now I need to kick off a QTE so I can move into phase 2 or into phase 3. And that's fine. Like, that didn't bother me too much. But like the demo basically that showed off, like, I'm going to play as Iron Man for a bit, and then I'm going to play as Thor for a bit, and then I'm going to play as Hulk for a bit, and then Black Widow for a bit. Like, that was just chock full of QuickTime events, and it gave the impression that that was what the game was going to be like. Yeah,
it wasn't a good representation of the actual game.
No, it's mostly just kind of a brawler. Like, at its core, now that I've unlocked more open-ended missions, they'll appear on the map, and they're of various themes and in various locations that recycle. And it reminds me a lot of, like, Destiny Strikes, to where you're in an area that you've been in multiple times, but, like, the objectives may be different each time that you go in. Like, you're gonna hack a system and download some intel, or you're gonna take out some elite squad that's causing you grief for some reason. And there'll be a sequence of events that you go through that leads up to whatever the final thing is. Gear reminds me a lot of Destiny. The resource system that I thought was just confusing as hell is explained in the tutorial levels. Those insufficient resources things, I couldn't upgrade the gear. Not that I couldn't equip the gear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like all those random things that you're picking up when you smash the crates, those are upgrade materials, and each slot has its own upgrade materials.
Okay.
And then past that, it's effectively like Destiny. Green items can be upgraded 3 times. Blue items can be upgraded 5 times. And, like, I don't know, purples
Purple,
can
the next
be,
color.
Purples can be upgraded 10 times, and I don't know. I think the gold color is also 10 times. I don't think like there's a difference between those two. But basically, like, it means you can get 10 more power levels out of a purple before you need to upgrade it. But it also kind of feels like a waste of resources because you're constantly getting new gear every time you do anything.
I suspect at some point that stops being true. There is a level cap, right?
Yeah, and purple gear is better than green or blue gear because once you get to purple and gold, there are traits on the gear that don't exist. Like blue, I think, can have a single trait. Purple can have 2 traits, and like gold can have 3 traits, and they somehow modify your abilities in a Diablo-esque style of how things get modified.
Just makes your FE punch do X% more damage.
Right. Or, you know, you're like, say you're playing Captain America, you can ricochet your shield off 1 extra target or that sort of stuff. I don't know, like it's not the best thing in the world. The moment-to-moment gameplay is still, it's not quite there yet, but I'm hoping they tweak it and it feels better as the game progresses. The story is really good. Like, it was worth, I consider it was worth me playing it just for the story because, you know, Kamala Khan's great. And it really was a good story. Like, it's still, there's a lot of uncanny valley though, because playing through this, they're very much trying to thread the needle between MCU and the traditional comic book characters.
Yeah.
I mean, 'cause there's a subtle difference between those two. So, like, Tony Stark in the comics is a little bit different than Tony Stark in the movies. Thor in the comics is a little bit different than Thor in the movies, but they're trying to, like, land halfway between them so that if all you know is the comics, yeah, you'll be comfortable with these characters. And if all you know is the MCU, you'll be a little weirded out by the characters at times, but for the most part, you'll be comfortable with the characters. The skins are fine. They're a little bit cheaper than Fortnite pricing. I think it's what, 15 and 10 and $7 for skin shop skins. You can somehow get these patterns that allow you to unlock a random skin. I have only gotten 3 so far. I do not know how you get them. I don't know if it's just a rare drop or if it was something specific I did. There's a battle pass system on each of the characters, but apparently, so you start off with all of them for all of the base characters. They're already unlocked and they're ready to go. But apparently in the future, you will have, like, when they introduce new characters, you will have to buy the battle pass for that character. And there's no seasonal aspect to it.
I was going to say, not a temporary thing.
No, it's just, this is a path. You have however long you want.
Yeah, they've said that none of them go away. Yeah, so at least there's that.
And apparently, like, say you pick one, like, they're adding Kate Bishop. I don't know when she's being added in, but that's the next champion. And her battle pass will not be unlocked by default. So you'll have to, I think it's $12 is what they said. But apparently by completing the battle pass, you get enough currency to buy the next battle pass. So if you go through the effort of completing each battle pass, you'll have currency to buy the next one when it comes out. It's kind of weird. I don't know how you actually earn credits in game, which is basically their cash up currency. I only have 100 of them, which isn't enough to purchase anything. Like, I think you can get a nameplate, which is basically just like the thing that goes behind your name in group play. I've not touched group play at all. I'm just doing single player content. It's enjoyable. You can invite the other Avengers to join you, so like you can build a party out of the characters and they're equipped out like the way that you have them equipped. So I don't know, like you basically have it's the Final Fantasy 14 system. Yeah, it's the Final Fantasy 14 system. They'll res you, which is great. Like,
that's
if you fall,
you won't do that.
Exactly. If you fall in battle, they will come res you. It's pretty great. The res system is actually really cool. Basically, when somebody's down, you just have to stand near them for a couple seconds, and they'll come back up, and they'll have like 3/4 health. So like you can come over there and just stand by someone and fight things that were fighting them, and they will just pop up after a period of time. So it's not like you have to like get a channel off or anything like that. You know, it's a pretty good blend of a Destiny-like game with a beat 'em up style game. So it is like I said, I mean, I think that the story is worth playing through. It was really enjoyable. Especially if you're a comic book fan or probably an MCU fan, it is worth playing. Especially if you like Ms. Marvel. Like, and I don't think they ever call her Ms. Marvel. They just call her Kamala. Because like so far there's been no discussion of her powers other than being an Inhuman. Also, this is leaning heavy into Inhumans are just X-Men. Like this is obviously this was obviously created prior to them getting back the X-Men franchise, because it is very much Inhumans are the new X-Men.
I mean, how much do they really have back the X-Men franchise?
I mean, they own it. Disney,
Do they?
Disney owns. Yeah, Disney bought Fox.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, X-Men movies and TV and all that. That's all Disney now.
But they had already been going down this path for a while of trying to set up Inhumans as being the new X-Men equivalent in the universe. So yeah, AIM is great. AIM is true to what you would expect. It's really good. I mean, like there's definite aspects of it that are very, very good. There are some aspects that are meh, it's okay. Like there's nothing that's really, really, really bad. Anyway, that's Avengers. I did a thing and I'm not regretting it. So yay.
I'm curious. So have you done any group play, or is that?
No, I've not touched any group play. Like by default, you have to like toggle on group play. So when you do any content, you know, unless you've specifically turned on matchmaking, you're just running with NPCs. And like, so there's a separate place that you can go into for specifically group play. I've not been in there because originally it warned me that there will be spoilers. So I'm guessing you're just doing missions.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Probably out of order. But at some point I am leveling right now. I think 50 is the level cap, and I think I'm like 27 or so.
You level like your account or individual characters?
Individual characters, that is less amazing. So it seems that when I'm running with like my NPCs, they are faked up to my level. Because like I've always been a big fan of Captain America. That's who I played in Marvel Heroes. So I'm running around as Captain America. It's, you know, dude that throws a shield and slams it down to the ground and knocks people over. It's my jam. Other than Cap, I probably have played Kamala the most because I like Kamala a lot. So those two are like well above in level everyone else. So at some point I'll have to catch them up.
That might be a good use for that multiplayer lobby thing.
Right, exactly. So that's probably a good use for multiplayer lobby. So just by the way that the NPCs are like that the companions that are tagging along with me are scaling, I'm guessing there's good scaling in the game for multiplayer. And it does rain loot on you. Like, there's been several times I've been in a mission and I get a warning telling me my inventory's full. And you can break down in the field, so that's not a big deal. But I wish there was something equivalent to a patrol, and maybe there is. I just haven't seen it. But none of the missions seem to be like really time sensitive, so I can roam around and complete little sub objectives, rescue people, figure out how to unlock areas to get to chests. There's a bunch of like sub content that's just off the beaten path that you can also do, or you can like just rush your way through it. But I think part of the reason why I haven't started doing any multiplayer is I assume it will be like everything else. And if you are not following the golden path, you are doing it wrong. Because traditionally, like in this type of game, nobody does side content. Yeah. Nobody does anything optional. They rush to the end.
It's true.
So yeah, I feel like while I am still exploring the game, it's probably not a good idea to do group content. Like I would, if say Ammo decides, let's group up. I would absolutely do that thing. But yeah, like for now, I'm mostly just exploring.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to try queuing solo or whatever either. So, like, would we be able to try multiplayer now, or do I have to finish campaign first?
That's what I don't know. Like, I think I can just join your fire team.
Oh, okay.
And I'm saying fire team, that's the Destiny thing. But yeah, so at the matchmaking screen, you have the ability to invite real people into your story mission.
Oh, okay.
And then it'll just fill out the rest of the party with NPCs. So I think that's probably the best option because there's no chance of getting something out of the normal story content loop.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you go into the Avengers Initiative section, which is the pure multiplayer section, it will give you like giant warning, that there may be spoilers. So I'm guessing you're just randoming into other people's groups at that point.
Oh, okay. Okay, well that's interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely finish campaign before I check that part out. But okay, I'll keep that in mind with just joining in then.
Yep. Okay. I think that's it. Like that's the crux of my experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so this next topic, I do not know who put it on here. That chuckle tells me it was Ash.
So at some point, probably last year when things actually made sense, Sam shared a video about dry brushing Star Wars Legion figures, and the recommendation was to use this particular makeup brush to do dry brushing, which when you think about it, makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Yeah.
And like when this came up again is I got an email from a store that sells Gundam kits telling me about a very, very expensive file. They wanted me to pay $25 for this nice glass file. So I looked into it and saw, oh wow, that looks really nice. But also, glass files are cheap. Like one can be yours for $3 to $4. And this is one of the best purchases I ever made regarding putting Gundam kits together. The file I had been using leaves a rough surface after sanding down some plastic. A glass file leaves a smooth surface.
It feels so weird, though.
It does feel weird. It means that the whole process of cleaning them apart before I put it together is basically non-existent. Like it went from file it down, sand it, use a finer sander to polish it, to, the surface is smooth. If I want, I can go over it with a fine sander to make it matte again, because it comes out shiny from the file. And I was thinking, like, more on the marketing side, I want people who are used to cosmetics to tell me more about things I can use in modeling. Because if nobody had commented on a YouTube video about this thing, I wouldn't have known that it could be yours for less than $25.
Right. Yeah, there has been a lot of money made over the last 30-ish years or so from people who are like, hey, what if we repackage beauty products and sell them to minis gamers at an extortionate cost charge up?
And it's not even just that. Like, so a prime example of this happening in the wild, if you go to a store and go to the beauty section of the store, they will have water squirt bottles, like spray bottles. And they will be like $5 to $8. If you go to the garden center, you can buy a much bigger and a much sturdier squirt bottle for like 50 cents. It's all about convenience and placing it along with the products that a specific market is looking for it. And because they don't think that, oh, hey, a garden sprayer would work just as well, like, sure, I'll spend the $8 on the pretty purple spray bottle.
Well, and that's the sort of interesting thing is it's not even that. Like, it's not even just that. Because you'd be hard pressed to convince me that that beauty shops aren't more convenient than your average game store, especially depending on where you live. But there's definitely like a marketing image thing going on there.
It makes me wonder what else I'm missing, honestly.
Right.
Well, and I almost wonder what, like, so for fine sanding, I wonder what a magic eraser would be like.
That doesn't work very well.
It doesn't. Have you tried?
I have tried that one. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because like it's basically a really, really, really fine grit sanding object, and none of its marketing tells you that basically you're slowly sanding the surface off of whatever you're cleaning.
Yep.
That might work okay as like a middle step, but it doesn't work as a first or last step.
Yeah. I mean, as a cheapskate, I have always been looking for these sorts of things. I mean, it goes back to the whole using magic floor polish as clear acrylic thinner, just because like it's acrylic, like it works the same as making an acrylic wash with, you know, what acrylic medium, the thin acrylic medium. But like that was something I picked up in art school because, you know, acrylic medium is expensive as hell if you want to thin out something with acrylic.
Yeah, I know Games Workshop sells this.
Yep.
Sure do.
Yep. And you can go to Dollar Tree and buy their equivalent of magic floor polish for, I don't know, $1. And you basically have thin, clear acrylic medium. Or like another thing that we used to use was plumber's putty instead of green stuff.
That one makes sense to me.
Because I think there's like 3 different varieties of it, depending on like what kind of finish you want it to have. It's just like a 2-part putty, just like green stuff.
I don't know. I'm definitely going to be on the lookout for interesting solutions to things like this in the future.
And like, I don't know if like back in the day, a lot of this stuff used to come off of the DACA forums. And I don't
Those forums still exist.
Yeah, like I don't know if that's still a popular thing, but like there was a whole section for random things that people found that worked for non-obvious purposes.
Yeah, well, and there are a million such tricks I've heard from that, but the beauty products hadn't really like penetrated that community, which is, I mean, not tremendously surprising, but
I know I've used like various sanding sponges and emery board type things.
My first fine sander was absolutely a nail file.
Yeah.
One of those like buffing nail files.
Yeah, like the piece of foam with like different grits on each side. Yes.
A hobby store will sell this to you for like $8. It can be had elsewhere for much cheaper.
Yes. You can buy it at you know, Sally Nail for like 25 cents. And I mean, another place that like I go on the regular to look for things to repurpose for other things is Harbor Freight. And I don't know how much of the country has Harbor Freight, but they have lots of really interesting things that can be repurposed for other purposes. Like you can buy magnetic screw holders off of tech sites, and you will pay a pretty penny for them, or you can go there and it's like, I don't know, $1.50 for a really nice magnetic tray that'll hold screws and other metal bits.
I don't think it has ever occurred to me to search for magnetic screw hole. That's not to say I wouldn't find it useful. I'm just saying it's never occurred to me to search.
There's I can't think of the name of it, but there's like Dyco, or I've only been there once, and it was in Dallas, and it's like a Japanese dollar store like place. Daiso, there you go. They have all kinds of interesting things too.
Oh, that's
can be repurposed for lots of other purposes.
One of those down the street from me.
But like, it's another place that's just prime for, interesting uses of things that weren't designed for that purpose. Yeah, those do not exist around me, but I have been to one in Dallas. Anyway, so a game that has just completely blown up that I did not expect to blow up is Fall Guys.
So yeah, Fall Guys is fun.
I've played a little bit of it when it first came out, and it is definitely entertaining.
I mean, what's a really good idea? Mario Party. It's a better idea? Mario Party with 60 players.
And Mario Party without the game board that just gets in the way of the fun.
I mean, it's really like, by the end, the last stage, if you manage to get to it, is basically what a Mario Party game would be. And it's probably the least compelling part of the game, but by the time you get there, you're so invested because you've whittled down from 60 people to like 10 or 12 people remain, and you might get the crown, and it imparts it with that much more meaning. But no, it's very funny, and I still haven't beaten Slime Climb.
I think I've only ever made it to the third phase. I've not made it past that.
I've made it to the last round a couple of times, but I've never won. But no, it's very, very enjoyable, very goofy fun. The various mini games are all pretty interesting,
except for Tail Touch, or whatever that's called, the thing where you capture the tail.
Yeah, you don't like that?
I don't like that. I am not that big of a fan.
I have done very few of the team games, so I can't really comment as well there.
The one where you're like moving the eggs isn't bad. I did not expect this to blow up the way that it has, though, and I assume it is largely because it is extremely watchable. It's
very watchable.
My comment on this was that it was trying to become the next Rocket League, and I think they succeeded at that.
Yeah. I mean, like, so one of the interesting things about the game is, like, say you get knocked out in the first round. Well, you're given the option just to hang out and watch to see where it goes from there. Or you can exit out immediately and queue back and try again.
I mean, this is part of the success of Battle Royale games as a genre.
Yeah, so I feel like this is way more watchable than a Battle Royale game in general.
It's also
because cute wobbly people.
It's also extremely streamable.
Even if you aren't winning. Perhaps
like
especially if you aren't winning.
Like, when you fail hilariously.
Yes. It's very funny watching all of the other very serious gamers getting into this. Like, I'm watching a lot of speedrunners who are playing it in all of the various skips they've discovered on various levels.
I mean, they can't exactly turn it off.
I know, but it is a thing that happens, and so like I watched a esports championship, 16 players, or was it? Yeah, it was 16 players esports Fall Guys, and it was very funny. And like, you have to go into this understanding that yes, RNG is a major factor in what's going to happen here. But even with that, like, you can still weight things in your odds pretty heavily.
I'm just really bad at making some of the jumps.
So are lots of people.
Because the stubby little beans don't jump as far as I'd expect them to. I also didn't expect, like, all of the fan art of, like, different characters as fall people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I did not expect that. I'm pretty sure these are the new minions.
I mean, that's probably not true, because minions are not relevant to the people who know about Fall Guys.
Yeah, but I still feel like it's going to be a lot like the minions were. We're going to see them in Walmart. We're going to see them on merchandise.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you are going to see them in Walmart.
There was a brand of toy that tried to be a thing, kind of along the lines of Pogs, called like Mad Beans or something like that. And I feel like the folks that did Fall Guys need to just buy the rights to that toy product and just rebrand it. Because, like, realistically, it's effectively like they look the same. Yeah, I don't have anything deep to say about the game. Like, I've not played a ton of it, but I do feel like it was ingenious for Sony to give this away on PlayStation Plus.
I will say it has invert mouse controls now, so I can play it.
Oh.
I've been playing a very little bit of it. It's very fun. I'm still bad at Slime Climb. I'm looking forward to Season 2 and seeing what comes up. There are some levels that are not great, like the matching game is not great.
My entire interaction with this game is streamed, so what's the matching game?
There are fruits on the ground that will like pop up and you have to get onto. They're going to show you a fruit and you have to move to a block that has that fruit tile on it. But they don't. They only show you what certain tiles are at a periodic basis.
Oh, so it's kind of hard to see the lay of the land when there's a bunch of people running around like crazy. So another thing that came out this week is Crusader Kings III.
Yay.
Oh boy.
I'm already hearing stories.
Did you want to generate more stories?
I did want to generate more stories.
Yeah. Like this is they took Crusader Kings 2 and all of the stuff that they had figured out over the years that it's been out, because it's been out for a while now, and created a new version of it that does, all the stuff that 2 did, but is more like, has a better user experience and a tutorial that's actually a tutorial. It's great.
I will say that the tutorial does a good job at like teaching you a whole bunch of important stuff, and still I feel like I'm discovering things every single time I play. This is a game about owning land and managing that land and managing your lineage and managing your succession of lands from one leader to the next.
Through whatever means necessary.
Yes.
Like,
Or
that
possible.
could be war, that could be murdering people secretly, that could be seducing people.
There's also, actual diplomacy.
Yeah, there's
an option.
There's actual diplomacy. Like
Yeah.
you
can
can
actually
play
work.
you can play an incredibly successful, fully pacifist game.
You can also make sure that you have enough arms through the strength of your offspring's marriages, forming an intermeshed weave of alliances, so no one will ever attack you.
Yeah, you can start World War I 900 years early. But it's great because it takes the sort of lots and lots of interesting events and little hooks and little just like systemic interactions that make strategy games, especially it's a grand strategy game, but it's what makes grand strategy games really, really interesting. But it has this really person focus to it. Like, it's not really about the kingdom. It is about the kingdom, or whatever holdings you're talking about, the duchy or the kingdom or the empire or whatever you happen to be on. But it's all through the lens of the people you're interacting with. It's not abstracted out away from
Yeah. Like
away from the human touch.
The biggest thing in which this varies from most grand strategy games is you don't have as much control over so many elements. You have control over you. And you can tell people to do things. You can, give orders and so forth. But, you've got counselors who might or might not like you and might be trying to work behind the scenes to undermine you, or might be working behind the scenes to help you. And it is more than anything, it is about handling those relationships.
It always sort of seemed like a Game of Thrones sim.
I mean, there's a Game of Thrones mod for Crusader Kings II that is immensely popular.
I mean, yes, you are managing all of the things that you would see in a Game of Thrones type of game.
Well, they're both drawing from the same inspiration. You've got Game of Thrones, which is drawing from like the sordid back and forth of, European politics circa the Middle Ages, and that's what this is.
Yeah, I mean, Game of Thrones was explicitly inspired by the War of the Roses, and that is in part the era that this is covering, because Crusader Kings III runs from, you can start as early as 867 AD and go up until 1453.
What happens?
Have you found out if it's possible to invent the printing press like 300 years early?
I don't think so.
I mean, it might technically be. So 1453 was the fall of Constantinople. That is the big event of 1453. And then 867 is the Viking invasion of the British Isles.
Yeah. So it's like broadly the entire Middle Ages.
And then the original start time in Crusader Kings II was 1066, which, is when Harold II was crowned king and the Norman invasion occurred and all of that. Like, it's possibly one of the single most important years in British history. And that is that's actually the year that it defaults to. Like, when you start a new game, that's the year that it shows you as, a default starting year.
I never played Crusader Kings 2, largely because, I don't know, like, it seemed like there was so much content for it that it felt like it would probably be hard to get into.
It was.
Whereas my hope is by starting with this, when there's not a ton of content yet, that I will be able to ease into it.
Like Crusader Kings 2, to start playing Crusader Kings 2, what you had to do was you had to go find the Let's Play thread, because Let's Play threads were the thing back then, and read about how to play Crusader Kings 2 via that, and maybe try to follow along. And then maybe you would know what the hell you were doing. Yeah,
which is just awful.
Here, there's a tutorial that basically teaches you all the things that Let's Play thread taught you, using the same ruler even. Because, yes, Ireland is Tutorial Island once again.
But it's interesting, because Ireland is Tutorial Island for a bunch of relatively good reasons.
Yeah, because Ireland is where you can play a small landed duke who is not anywhere close to the garbage that is going on in Europe at the time, probably far enough away from England, to be relatively safe from all of that nonsense. And you can just slowly, bring other counts under your rule and try to form, and become the King of Ireland. And then if you want to keep going from there, you can try and work your way towards the British Empire.
And it's really interesting because to me it's a great history lesson, because I really quickly get a sense of, like, you read a history book and you're like, oh, this person married this person from like forever away, and it led to all of these wars, and such and such died, and so the whole area was plunged into war. And it's like, how, and from a history standpoint, it's really hard to get a sense of, like, how does this happen? Like, were people just incapable of settling their differences in a reasonable way? And the answer is partly no, but also partly like you can get away with stuff. And a lot of it is people trying to get away with whatever they can get away with. You don't know. Like, you can be in Ireland and have no idea what's going on in Wales. Like, nobody's watching. And so it's like, oh, there's nobody here. There's no like established rules that people feel like they need to follow. And so as a result, you get these like, you can really see what's going on in some of the like, how do you get to this constant back and forth between England and France?
Yeah, why did they literally stay at war for centuries?
Right.
There's a good reason for that, and it mostly has to do with family problems.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's very funny. One of the first things we were talking about is like, how do you figure out who has a claim to anything, and then who has the right of succession on all of these claims? It's like, oh, it's very Byzantine, which is probably why we see that name, the Byzantine Empire, down here. I finally figured out how to fabricate claims on a duchy, though. I'm very excited about this.
When you say fabricate claims...
Listen, you're going through legal texts long enough, you're going to find something that says, I own that.
Well, you're not going through. Your bishop is going through.
Yes.
Because he's the one that knows how to read and write.
Like, in this game, do you want to basically create a claim out of thin air? Sure, ask your bishop to go through the text and figure out a way to justify your claim.
Give him a year, give or take, and he'll get it taken care of.
And that's like...
That's one way to get a claim.
And that's the thing. That's the thing that you see. And it's like one of those surprisingly historical things where you see like these three people all claim to be the rightful ruler of this place. And so they go to war about it. And like,
well, and not to the least part that they probably all really were related, because all of these kings and queens and dukes were somehow related through generations of cross marrying.
Well, because alliances are important, and the way you get an alliance is you marry one of your children off to one of their children,
or get your children betrothed to each other if they're young enough. Listen, there's a reason fertility is a trait that you want to have in the positives.
Mm-hmm. You're going to need a lot of kids.
You're going to need a lot of kids.
Because A, they're useful for alliances, and B, a lot of them are going to die.
Uh-huh.
This is the Middle Ages. Washing your hands is a perk you have to buy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of your kids end up becoming your knights because they are free knights.
They're usually
doesn't sound good for mortality.
It's bad.
Yeah, you can forbid them from going out and being knights. If you want to keep them around, that's a decent idea. On the other hand, if you let them go out and be knights and they survive, they get a lot of prestige doing that.
It's true. You also get the opportunity. You can also go the other way, where you can forbid someone from going out and being a knight, but you can also force them to go do it.
That too. You want somebody dead?
Yeah,
that's one way.
Yeah,
to try at least. It's not guaranteed, but what is?
And it's not nothing.
And unlike trying to have them murdered, it's not illegal.
Yeah, they died a hero. I mean, incredibly tragic.
Yes, they had no business being there, and yes, you forced them to be there. But that's your prerogative as their liege.
Or you could marry them if they're really annoying you. You could marry them off in a matrilineal marriage.
Oh,
yeah, if you want to kill their bloodline.
Isn't this your bloodline?
Well,
that's the point.
Yeah, but you might want to dump that branch of it. Although the claims still go, so you got to be careful there.
It might also be somebody under you who is uppity and who you don't want to have try to usurp your titles.
Or it might be somebody who is This is exactly what just happened. To me, I had somebody who was in line, my next in line of succession, who is not a member of my court. And I was like, nah, that's not acceptable. So I actually solved that by disinheriting him.
Which, of course, pisses people off.
Yeah.
Well, it also reduces the prestige of your line.
Yeah.
War is surprisingly interesting.
They cleaned war up, like combat and all that up so much. It's so much less fiddly than it was in the previous one.
It's still pretty fiddly.
It's still a little fiddly. But
it's broadly similar to
Yeah.
Stellaris.
I was going to say, it's fiddly, but it's fiddly in a way that leads to interesting decisions and tactics rather than like if you are in a numbers disadvantage, there are some solutions you can do where you're just basically trying to ring them around for a while you hopefully wait for allies to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Or you engage them in territory that's super advantageous to you.
Mm-hmm. Or, if you've built enough different types of man-at-arms, you can try and rock, paper, scissors, whatever they brought. Because one thing that they changed from 2 is, in 2, just levies were all the types of warriors, like infantry and horsemen and all that. They came from levies. In Crusader Kings III, levies are peasants with pikes. They are fodder. They are not good against anything. They are not bad against anything. They are simply bodies.
They do make up the bulk of your army.
They do. A lot of bodies is an important thing to have. If you have enough bodies, you can beat much better trained men. But you also have men-at-arms, which you maintain with cash and or prestige, depending on your culture. And that's where you can build specific, like, light and heavy infantry, archers, siege weaponry once you gain access to that. And then you have the ability to bring, the types of men-at-arms that will be useful for you in this particular fight. It also there's a few things that are implemented to prevent blobbing. That's one of them is, a lot of times you're a lot better off with 2 or 3 better built armies than just one giant blob of everything. 2, counties have a supply limit, and if you have more people in your army than the supply limit, they start starving really fast, and that's bad.
That's real bad.
It's real bad.
Maybe you don't invade Russia in winter.
Yeah.
Right. And it matters.
They implemented a heavy penalty for a month after disembarking from a boat, so no more just jumping off a boat onto an army and wrecking them. Unless you have like 4 or 5 times as many men, your guys are probably going to die.
Wouldn't that make defending an island really easy?
Yes.
I was trying to take the Orkneys the other night, and I ended up bringing 5 times as many men. And then he hired some mercenaries, so I had to sit and wait for 3 years, just like keeping his island under siege until his mercenary contract ticked down. Because he wasn't going anywhere. If he got off that island, I was going to jump on and take his only county. He was hoping I would go away.
And which is one of the reasons why Ireland makes a great tutorial island. Because if you can basically get control, if you can basically consolidate Ireland, it's really, really hard to crack.
It's also kind of hard to get off of, though.
It is a little hard. Well, it is a little hard to get off of, but it requires that you put yourself in between usually 3 other factions, and that can be pretty touch and go.
I mean, my general method to try and get off of Ireland after I've sewn it up is to get a hold of something in Wales.
Yeah.
Because usually there's some weak counties in Wales that you can pick up.
Wales.
Yeah.
But I know from listening to Sam, this leads to unpronounceable ruler names.
It does.
God. Yes.
I'm currently playing as the King of Bohemia, which is a lot of fun. So a lot of these people have various interesting decisions you can try and do. I'm curious how close any of you have gotten to any of those.
I mean, I had the opportunity to make one of my rulers a cannibal.
Oh wow.
She started getting really interested in exotic meats. Like there's all these wonderful games that you can, like venison and quail and all of these things. What other exotic meats are there out there? I have to find more. It was like, okay. And then an event pops where there's a servant is dying, and I could have a taste.
I mean,
I'm not going to kill him. I'm just going to wait for him to die, and then it's
this is a really dark tangent. But like, I've often thought humans must taste really good. Because why else would we put so many like laws to stop people from eating other people? like they must taste really good. Like otherwise we wouldn't have to prohibit it quite so hard. Because like if they tasted awful, then nobody would want to eat it anyway.
An event show up where I could like delve further into like ancient mystical practices with like incense and stuff, and I don't know where that one would have gone. I was playing that character extremely Catholic and didn't want to risk losing piety, so
how bad would it have?
I was the way I was keeping that character in cash was I would build up some piety, and then I would go to the Pope and say, give me some money, and the Pope would say yes because he loved me.
My character's been having some piety problems because he may have been having an illicit affair with the King of Denmark.
Uh-oh.
Which is, incidentally, this is the other thing that this game was already good. There's some other tidbits that push it over the top, because again, much like Stellaris or any grand strategy game, it's got just a whole host of tweaks and things that you can change to customize your playthrough, including general things like, can you research technology faster if a neighbor has it? Or how do religions feel about one another by default? Or, whatever the case may be. You can be like, hey, I want holy wars to just be happening all the time. Or you can be like, you know what? I don't want holy wars. We're not going to have the Crusades. But you can also set things like default sexuality and gender role defaults. And so my recent play has been Big Gay Europe. And it's incredible how stable it is. Like, it's fascinating. And also, the world is huge.
Yeah, it's not just Europe, as it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, it extends as northwest as Iceland and as southeast as, like, the southern tip of India and, like, some parts of China.
It extends, like, as far south as the bend of Africa.
Yeah.
And as far east as, about halfway China. Basically, all of the land that they added over the course of Crusader Kings II, they pretty much just kept here. Because Crusader Kings II did start out as just, like, Europe and very Eastern Asia and just the very north bit of Africa, like, Morocco and that. There's a lot of stuff that they added over the course of 2 that is in here from the beginning.
And it's huge.
Like a whole bunch of religions that aren't just Christian and Islam.
Yep.
Yeah. It is not one of those grand strategy games where you're going to take over, where you're just going to turn the entire map your color. It's not a map painting game.
No.
I mean, to a degree it is, but you're trying to paint the map with your dynasty.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could theoretically try and vassalize the world.
Yeah, but let's be real.
Alexander was before this game started. Well before this game started.
Like, let's be real. That's not going to happen. Like, it would be totally unmanageable.
I mean, by the time you get to Empire, maybe?
The thing is
even then, trying to hold more than a few kingdoms gets really unwieldy. At least that was the case in 2.
So what I will say, one of the things that we found that's really great for doing some of the more unmanageable things is playing multiplayer.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we played as the 4 Norse brothers in 867.
Invading England and stuff.
And yeah, it mostly went really well. Ivar the Boneless had some issues up in Scotland, but I think we mostly got it dealt with.
We managed to form the Kingdom of Denmark and the Kingdom of Sweden. So the next step is working together to form the Danelaw.
Well,
Yeah.
I wasn't too far off from having England wrapped up.
And it's really neat because it means that you have like a level of coordination that you otherwise wouldn't. And I'm so used to these kinds of big strategy games, the difficulty going up dramatically when you add other players because you've got to manage way more stuff. And it's actually easier in this game because you've got people who have your back.
Yeah, it's also the thing where in a game like Stellaris, a group of people working together can snowball really, really, really hard. And this game has so many anti-snowball things happening in it that prevent you from getting too big and getting out of control that everything always feels tough. Like you're always looking to have each other's back, and there's already somebody bigger. There's always Genghis Khan coming around the corner.
You just hope he's far away. It's fine. He'll be really far away.
I was just looking at the Kumania Khanate in my game, which is currently sitting at 15,000 soldiers in its military strength.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not looking forward to that coming across Europe.
Oh yeah, so the list of things that are in this that are in this game from Crusader Kings II, happily the Aztecs do not appear to be on the list.
Oh,
I thought those were only in Europa Universalis.
No, Sunset Invasion is a Crusader Kings II expansion, and it's the one expansion that people mostly leave turned off.
Because the Aztecs will roll up and wreck you.
Because you've already got the Mongols are going to come in.
It was intended to balance the danger on the west from the Mongols with danger on the east from the Aztecs. But, yeah.
But the Aztecs are absurd.
I thought that was an EU4 DLC. Whoops.
But yeah, it's fascinating. Like part of the other piece of it for me is you're using the same resources to develop your space as you are to expand, versus having development in your own space give you the resources you need to expand. And so it doesn't have that cycle where you take more and get more to take more and get more to take more. And so like one of the things that I've done, like my most recent, one of the hardest parts of the game is succession. Because historically accurate, succession means that things go crazy real fast and a whole bunch of people see a power vacuum. And one of the reasons that it's a good idea to have your kids go and do stuff while you're alive is because then they're good at things. Because boy, does it suck to jump to an heir when your character dies, you jump to an heir and you've coddled that heir and kept them safe and they're bad at everything.
Whoops.
Yep.
Because it's hard to get skill points. And a lot of times, like, you want to make sure that your kids have an education, that they have mentors, that they go out and do stuff. You want all those skill points so that when you drop into their shoes, they're in a good way. But also, I went through a generation where all I did, I had one heir who was like hopeless at war and like good at diplomacy, but not good at managing things. Like really, really like decent diplomacy and really, really good stewardship and bad at everything else.
I mean,
and had a one warfare skill.
I mean, that's the time when you try and build up the holdings you have, right?
Yep. And it was like, I lost Wales because that's apparently just the thing that happens every time you have a succession in Ireland. It's like Wales is like, hey, could you not please? But hold on to your territories, build them up. And it's still interesting because there's still a lot to do. It's not like just going out and conquering is the only like really interesting gameplay, because there's a whole bunch of interesting like diplomacy and various other things that you can do. And so what wound up happening was he raised his daughter to be just this ridiculously good fighter, and also had like 18 kids, and they all got married to all these other places. So then when the next generation came around and all the kids liked each other and were good friends, and now we're alliances and it's the next generation, I was like, I'd like to go to war with Scotland. I've got 12 allies. They're going to roll up and say hello. I was like, yeah, it's a whole bunch of setup, but that payoff is great.
This game also has a very, very cool diplomacy system involving the concept of hooks, which can be used against you and it doesn't feel dumb.
Yes.
Like, the fact that I can be, like, you can have favors in so many games. It's like, well, these are great for the AI, but what would I actually do if I was talking to another player? No, what you do is you give these hook systems where now they can make deals with you and you just are forced to accept them because they have a hook on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mostly you get these hooks by, finding out secrets about people and blackmailing them. But sometimes it'll also be something like, saving their life. That'll get you a strong hook on a person. Or
giving them like pressing one of their claims.
Yep, that'll get you a hook.
Yep.
Like there's lots of ways to do it.
And then maybe you can use that hook and vassalize them.
It's like, hey, I got you your land back. Maybe you want to swear fealty to me. And they're like, you know what? That's true.
The other thing I really like that they added here that 2 does not have is the stress system.
Yes.
Because one of the problems you're going to do with 2 is, sure, your character has these stats and these traits and would theoretically act in this way because of that. But you're the player and you can choose whatever. Like there's nothing forcing you to act like that. Well, now there's still nothing forcing you to act like that. But doing things that are in opposition to your character's traits stresses them out. Like if your character is kind, then executing people will cause them stress. If your character is just, then doing things that are unjust will cause them stress. So I hope you didn't intend that character to be a schemer, because it's probably not going to work real well.
Yeah.
If your character is shy, then basically anything that involves talking to people directly will cause them stress. So I sure hope you didn't intend them to be a diplomat or a seducer.
Yeah.
On the other hand, doing things that match up with your traits will relieve stress. So if your character is wrathful, then executing someone will reduce your stress.
Seriously, just get a puppy.
If you have a puppy, you can pet the puppy, but you can only pet the puppy every so often. And also something bad might happen to the puppy.
Oh.
Yes. This was the thing that almost sent me. This was the thing that when we were playing multiplayer, I was playing the youngest child.
The one that actually liked the rest of us.
By a margin that I didn't quite realize was as much as it was. I was like 25 years younger than everyone else. But I'm the King of Denmark. I'm super, super diplomatic. And I'm mostly using my diplomacy to make sure that everything south of me, all of like Bavaria and etc., and like Finland, don't declare war on us, so that my brothers can take over Britain, which is great. Except that I like all of my brothers. which meant that, and I'm also the youngest, which meant that every time one of my brothers would die of old age, I would get super stressed out. And I actually wound up with if you hit various tiers of, if you like fill up the stress bar, you can have a mental break. And that mental break can manifest in either you try to tough it out and you get even more stress, which can push you closer to another worse mental break, or you can basically find some coping mechanism.
Pick up some bad habit, like drinking.
Yeah. It could be drinking. It can be you party too much. You could just like stress eat. You could do like retail therapy. I mean, it's a whole thing. There's all kinds of things where it's like based on your traits, you might find something to do. And like my second highest stat as the King of Denmark was learning. So I wound up going on a pilgrimage to reduce stress, because it was like, I'm a learned, pious person. Going on a pilgrimage is going to make me feel better about life. But it was pretty expensive and time consuming and dangerous.
Yep.
But it was like, this is my way out of being turbo stressed all the time. But I like it. It goes even further into that, like, you're playing a character and you're interacting with other characters. You probably don't want to be a shy leader in a gregarious court. That's going to be super stressful for you. They're also really good with recommended starts, as well as letting you play just whatever. Like, the recommended starts are all kind of Eurocentric, but are like pieces of history that you might know about. But like right now I'm playing the Tamil Kings. Who are the Tamil Kings? Merchants, probably. I do have all sorts of spices. One of the things that I'm still getting used to is the effect on different religions and culture. Like, I tried playing a game in Spain, and turns out Castilian succession is all kids get an equal share of titles.
Uh-huh.
I want to point out how much of an absolute nightmare that is.
And it was in real life.
Yeah. And it's a cultural thing. So you can't research a tech that changes it. Or it's very hard to research a tech that would change it. You would have to change the culture. Changing culture is real hard and real slow.
Yeah, it's like county by county. You can change the culture of counties. And then, like, changing the culture of people, like existing people, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Occasionally, like, you as a character might get an event that ultimately leads to them becoming fascinated with a different culture and having the option to change cultures. But mostly what you have to do is you have to start educating your children and have your children educated by people of the culture you want to change to, and try and do it that way. So it is a multi-generation project. And until you are done with it, it is going to wreak havoc on the control of your kingdom.
Yeah, you're going to be a very unstable kingdom. Again, much like history has a million stories about, super unstable as culture shifts. Yeah, I had one of the playthroughs that you have that you can choose from is the Spain, when you basically have, is it king? I forget which Spanish king it is, but had 3 sons and split the kingdom between them, more or less. And you could play as those 3 sons who all hate each other, scheming and fighting your way up to the top. And I tried the schemer son, and the schemer son is real good at scheming, like horrifically good.
Is he good at anything else?
Not great at, he's okay at other things, but it was like your stat, like a pretty good stat is like a 14 or a 15. And higher than that, you're really getting into like, this person is great at, like, incredibly great at their job territory. Like, I feel great if I have more than 1 or 2 counselors at higher than a 15.
Yeah.
Like, that feels real good. The scheming brother king of Spain starts at an intrigue of 25,
Wow.
which is not the highest stat I've seen. but it's enough for him to be able to assassinate both of his brothers back to back within 2 years with a 90% chance of success, and then just casually inherit all of the rest of the kingdom.
Are his successors guaranteed to share this wonderful intrigue?
That's the problem.
No.
Successors are not guaranteed to share that incredibly high intrigue. And also, he's a seducer, so he has a whole bunch of kids.
Oh, which are going to shatter the empire he builds.
Right at the same time as the Moors are coming up from the south.
Uh-huh.
It's I was like, yeah, I feel good. This is so successful. I'm taking territory. My successor is going to be really good at, my heir is really good at stewardship, so I can start building up a little bit, and everything is going to be, oh no, the exact thing that happened last generation just happened again, and also now all the Moors are fighting us. Well, there goes Spain.
Yeah, I'm playing over in a Slavic king, and one of the things that is interesting is that I have a lot less control over who inherits, because it is the oldest person in the entire family, oldest male person in the entire family becomes the heir. But it means that it's easier for them to transition from one to another. It's just probably going to happen more likely, more frequently.
Yeah, it's good that it's easier because people, become king when they're in their 70s often.
Yeah. Although I did just have a 36-year-old person become king, and so that's feeling pretty great.
Wow.
But yes, long story short, it's an incredible story generator, and this is the most accessible I've ever seen this game. And it really wants you to be able to not understand every piece of it, but understand it enough that you can poke around and explore.
Yeah. I also think it's a very fun game.
Yes.
Other than just telling interesting stories and coming up with funny moments, I think the gameplay is very fun. And trying to achieve some of these big, insane goals, I'm trying to unite the Slavs, and that seems like nonsense, is really interesting.
Yeah, it has a built-in system. It has a built-in system so that you might do some of the same stuff over and over again. You might have to, with a new heir, get all of your, go through the gameplay of getting your council to like you. But also that's a fun thing to try. That's a fun puzzle to solve. And you get to solve it without it feeling like you're backtracking, because you're still moving forward always. Also, I've learned that selecting the biggest thing on the map is the worst strategy for starting a game.
What, did you select the Holy Roman Empire at some point?
Okay, the Holy Roman Empire is a whole other nightmare that I don't even want to start with.
I mean, I'm dealing with the Holy Roman Empire right now because I'm the king of Bohemia. And one of the things that I've discovered is there's a reason all of your vassals want to be on your council. It gives you massive buffs to be on Alesia's council.
Mm-hmm. Which tidally also makes it interesting that you can have a setup where players are each other's vassals, and that still feels okay.
Yes. I mean, especially if the vassal contract is really really low or exempt, and at that point, you can have people who are very big and powerful, like kings in their own right, be vassals to emperors. And in fact, you probably are going to have that if you ever try and become an emperor. I don't know that I'd ever be satisfied being a duke under a king. I'd probably want to ask some serious questions about how can I be king.
Well, I mean...
And I'm pretty sure there are pretty good answers to how can I be king.
Help empire build and find upward mobility. I mean, or just stab your way up to the top. But
stab my way up to the top seems faster.
That, while faster, it is so much less stable.
I mean, I'll just fabricate a claim that I'm the king of England.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out that just having a bit of paper does not make the people in that territory be like, oh yeah, okay, that's reasonable.
The piece of paper helps a lot, though.
It does.
I think at this point we've gone considerably over.
Mm-hmm.
But I hope to spend some time this week playing Crusader Kings so I can experience this story-driven nonsense. Any final thoughts about anything we talked about tonight?
I don't think so.
Anything?
Well, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.